Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 10th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher moderating. And also present are Aaron McHale, Ivan Duarte, Ralph Kohler, Schleppkopf, and Simo Helston. Thank you all for participating. Also, I try to keep an eye on the chat, so if it's easier for you to type rather than speak, I'll read your comments into the out loud for the recording. Currently looking at the issue for today's meeting, it's issue number 3338999. And I'd like to start just briefly reviewing a little bit of progress on something that we've been following for a while. So one is the issue, create a redirect for the new block types path, which was recently fixed. So that's issue 3333383. And this is sort of a technical issue, but it's when we change an admin path, which we did in a previous issue, this issue now tells us how we go about managing that. We present warnings to the user, we log messages, and so on and so forth, and some other technical stuff. So, but it's kind of exciting because it's exciting to be because until now we've never really changed an admin path. And there are several that we would like to change. And now that we've done one of them and agreed on how the warnings should be, we can go ahead and do others. So I guess the next step in that progress for rearranging the admin pages for custom blocks or content blocks, the next one is going to be issue 2862564, move the custom block library to content. There's been a lot of activity on this issue. I think most recent comment is from Aaron. But that's one that's been around for a while, and a lot of us think it's I think this is the most clear cut of the related issues, but we're going to move the admin page out of the structure menu and into the content menu for custom blocks. So I hope that within the next week or so we'll get this one fixed and move on to the next one. And then just before the meeting started, I found this one. It's issue 2822890. Taxonomy vocabulary translation local task tab not showing in the UI. And let's see, I think the screenshots show you everything you need to know. When you're looking at the listing page for vocabulary, you see all these tabs or local tasks: list, edit, manage fields, manage form display, and manage display. But you don't see the tab for translation. And then when you go down to, when you do find translating the vocabulary, you don't see all the other tasks. And I'm pretty sure that this needs to be fixed by changing the path. And now that we know how to change a path, we should be able to fix this issue as well. So that's just my quick overview of this recent progress. Any questions or comments on those issues? Aaron, you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Benji. Yeah, again, it's super great to see, the work that we've all managed to get done on those. And with any luck, 10.1 is practically not that far, so maybe we can get them all done. But the thing that's been on my mind actually is with the change to the path. We've, as you sort of described there, we've effectively established a new pattern here for how we approach changing paths and redirect. And I'm mindful that it would be good to maybe document that somewhere so that we can point to it in future reference. And I don't know, I don't know if the sort of user interface standards is like a subpage there, or if I know there's been talk of obviously we have the admin UI design system, and maybe I should speak to Christina about whether that will include ultimately this kind of documentation about how we deal with these kind of patterns that involve different these user interface these user interaction patterns is what I was trying to say. So yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there to the group and see if people had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I guess there are two questions there. One is we should have some sort of guidelines for what the paths should be, and that's a question of usability and interaction. And the second part is when you decide you need to change one, as we're doing now, how do you do that? That's more of a technical issue. There is already an open issue policy no patch, determine a best practice for providing BC or backwards compatibility for internal paths to change between minor releases. This is issue 333, 3394, and that was opened as part of this process. So that issue is open, and I've suggested, I think yes, here it is. I suggested in the comment here that we make this a documentation issue and create a documentation page for this sort of the back end part of this question.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible step, and we could probably use that issue to refine what that is. Because as you said, I think there's a number of different things involved there. It's like when you see there's a need to change a path, obviously what the new path should be is of course a question that needs to be discussed, but there are things there we can codify in documentation and policy, like for instance what the message is, what type of redirect you use, what the route name is. Not all of them are not all of those are usability questions, but it's together they form a pattern of how we handle that change. So as I said, I'm not sure whether the user interface standards are the ideal place for that. They do touch on it because it is an element of it's a pattern that is going to expose itself through the user interface. Maybe there is a different part of the documentation is more appropriate, but yeah, maybe we should use that issue to certainly figure out these things.
Yeah, and Simo, did you want to say something?
No, I was just switching devices, so that's why. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. I'll release the screen share, and if someone else has an issue they'd like to bring up, now's the time. I think Shalkop for Yvonne, are either of you ready?
There is, I don't actually have an issue at the moment, but I was looking at the list and I noticed there is one of the issues that doesn't have needs usability review tag. So I was wondering if it's so I can't really remember if that is something that we already checked, or is it something that maybe some of us forgot to tag when it was in accessibility review. So that was the issue.
I would like to start with the issue. Yvonne, Shalkop, are you there? You're both
muted.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, do you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will do that right now. So let me please. Okay, let me know, please.
Yeah, I see your screen. Can you start with the issue? And
yes,
for the sake of the recording, read the number into the.
Okay, so yeah, this is the issue. It's about rewarding this message that is being shown to the users in some forms when they do some selections. So
and for the sake of the recording, what's the issue number?
Yeah, the issue number is this one, 326516. Okay, so yeah, in general, I follow the steps to reproduce the issue. I should say that this step to enable this enabling this part didn't work. I needed to do the other way around, to copy the module and enable things. And I think in general, reading all the discussion and all the comments, there are multiple places when Drupal used to show this message to the user, but
It's a little hard to see from the screenshot what the message is. Can you show us what this is on the live site? Do you have a test site running?
Yeah, I have the test site in here. So this is the test form that you have in the issue. As you can see, when I select, for example, in this case, both checkbox enable, this is the issue, and a legal choice has been detected, and please contact the site administrator. As far as the end of the conversation in this issue, the intention is to at first remove this illegal word because it means like something that is really against the law, and it replaces by invalid or invalid choice or something similar. And also at the end, Jess was suggesting to remove this part, the last. The first reason is because the please is something that based on the new standards for the text that that Drupal wants to use the wording. For example, here, sorry that I'm going really fast to the end of the issue, but yeah, in these guidelines about the interface text style, the word please is like not recommended in this case. And also because sometimes this message used to be shown also to developers, so this is not really giving you an insight of what's happening. So she's proposing to remove this part completely because this word, and also because it doesn't help to the user to find the real reason or the real issue in this case. So the proposal here is to replace all of these for something like this. An invalid form value was submitted to be more specific about the issue, and also to remove the parts that are not giving real information about the issue that's happening. So I would say that's it for this issue, and that's the reason the issue is being discussed here.
Ralph, go ahead. You're still muted.
Thanks. I'm sorry. There are two things. At first, I agree that illegal, the term, is loaded. But in regards of the terminology, I've quickly checked before the meeting. Tori Podomayersky brings in another aspect in her book, Strategic Writing for UX. In her book, invalid was noted as a prominent example in the context of error messages. She notes that most orgs prefer to avoid such emotionally loaded words. People rarely want to be told that they have failed, and it's rarely best way to encourage them to move forward. And there's also to consider that invalid has been used in the United States to describe people with disabilities and is viewed as an ableist word. And I've also checked in the Disability and Inclusion Strategic Guideline from 2019, invalid is also listed. So maybe it is also not the best choice. And the terminology aside, neither illegal nor invalid explains to the user what is actually wrong or and how the issue could be resolved, the error. So I'm not sure if the change would solve it just by changing it from illegal to invalid, but yeah.
Okay. I'm a little surprised at that analysis. One part of it that it's used to describe a disabled person, when it's used as it's really two different words that happen to be spelled the same way. One is an adjective and it's pronounced invalid, and the other is a noun and it's pronounced invalid. It's a curious bit of the English language that you can have two different words spelled the same way. But I think at least for native English speakers, that confusion is unlikely, but perhaps perhaps non-English speakers would have more trouble with it. And I'd still like to have an alternative suggested. Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think we generally want to try and use keeping it simple, terms that are easy to understand. So if there's a risk, what Ralph mentioned and your comment there, Benji, is I hadn't even popped it to my head, because to me I just always associate that word, the way it's spelled, with the word invalid, and meaning to something to do with submission, but never even never even crossed my mind about the other meaning. But I think the main thing is we want, particularly with error messages, we want them to be this sort of descriptive and actionable. So I think, substituting illegal for invalid doesn't really add anything there, but also, at least with the current message, the action is contact the site administrator. If we remove that, then there's no obviously we want to try and provide something better, but there isn't a sort of call to action there. And I wonder what is the situation where a user would end up seeing this message? Is it if there's no other suitable message to display?
I think I've seen that when there's, for example, a select list, and somehow you post the form without one of the options, or there's an error in the form processing and it doesn't recognize one of the options it presents.
So,
for example, if you look at recent blog messages and you look for messages from the, the comment module, and there aren't any messages from the comment module, I think you'll get this message.
okay, so is this a sort of like a fallback to when a suitable error isn't available, or has it been, if there's not another more specific message? Like, for instance, if you exceed the maximum length of a field, I think you'll get a message that's something like, the field value is too long, right? That's a more specific message, I would consider.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe in this case, we need to analyze the code deeper and understand which situation are triggering these kind of messages, because I agree. If in this case, maybe the issue is because I cannot select more than one, the message should be more specific about that. Maybe this is a really old code from Drupal, but maybe we need to really go deeper and analyze the code and find a best way to provide an error message here.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Aaron that descriptive and actionable are the criteria for an error message. I don't think that contacting the site administrator is normally the right thing to do at this point. So
yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying it's a good action. It's just it's an action that the user could take. So compared to nothing there at all.
And also I posted into the Zoom chat the proposed wording, and invalid form value was submitted. Which, by the way, is still in the passive voice. I wonder if we could rephrase it in the active voice, something like the form could not process these choices, these inputs.
Could we use the word the words not accepted or not allowed?
Yeah, maybe something like the values you submit are not allowed, something like that.
Yeah, to be honest, like it's really hard to, because again, you know, like we just discussed, that we don't know exactly when this is likely to come up. So what I think, you know, as Ivan said, maybe they need to go back and actually figure out, okay, these are the situations you would see this message, and then maybe a better solution is let's just write some more specific error messages for those situations. And then maybe there is an ultimate like fallback message that gets displayed, and that's fine. But at least then if we have more information, we can, you know, if we brought this issue back up, once we have that information, we'd be able to make a more informed recommendation.
Well, let's keep scope in mind. This issue can't handle more specific error messages for every single form in Drupal. We are just talking about this fallback message.
Right. I guess like I'm thinking if you've got a, you know, a select list, right, that it's the widget that's going to be, I think it'll be like the widget or something to do with that specific field that will be throwing up the error. So
Yvonne suggests in the chat, the submitted values are not allowed. And it's not explicitly actionable, but at least it's getting to the point that, you know, what you should do at this point is choose different options.
see, I could also see a situation where this error comes up because there's potentially a bug in the form logic.
Yes.
So in that situation, the user might not actually be able to choose a different option though.
Is it possible in cases like that, maybe to have a documentation page in Drupal where this situation may happen, and instead of saying, please contact site administrator, we can show a message, a generic message, and then a link for the people to read more about these kind of situations, how they used to produce these errors, as you said, maybe a bad logic in the form, code or something like that. So maybe at least the user can read what could happen in this case. Maybe there is an error from the developer, an error from the administrator, an error from, but at least there will be more context about the issue.
I think that would.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that'd be okay on the admin side, but on the front end, I would be really hesitant to link to a Drupal documentation page because, well, for one, the user probably doesn't know they're on a Drupal site, and also like the site might not want to be linking users to Drupal documentation. Maybe you know, okay, so if we assume that this message is like the fallback message, like a message of last resort, let's say, I think the only thing, even in like that situation where like the form itself is broken and the user gets this message, maybe the only maybe the only possible action is actually to contact the site, but instead of saying contact the site administrator, we link to the site-wide contact form if that's available.
Actually, Yvonne, you're still sharing your screen. Could you go to the admin reports DB log, the recent log messages?
Yeah, we'll go there. Recent log messages here. Yep.
And select one of the 4 types. No, I don't want a particular message. I want the listing page. And don't scroll down. In the upper left corner, just choose any one type and click the filter button. Okay, and now go to your address bar and replace, I can't make it out, is that form? Yeah, just replace that with, say, comment. Ta-da! I think that those are better steps to reproduce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is already a more specific message at the bottom of the page. You can see no log messages available, but we also get this standard error message.
So it's the same error message, whether or not it's something that is chosen on the form or something that is chosen in the URL or written in the URL. So that's kind of a best not to refer to. Yeah, yeah, but then again, like typing in the URL, it's kind of submission as well, even if it's not submit button.
Yeah, in this case, I just changed it to the one that I proposed. So yeah, maybe that would be a different message, but
Ralph asks in the chat, does the type comment exist for log messages? Yes, there is a comment module, and it does sometimes log messages.
So it means that that type exists, but that type isn't listed in the select field, and therefore the error message was caused.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarification.
Actually, in this case, I think these submitted values are not allowed is even better, because that kind of value kind of exists, but it's not allowed because the module is not enabled.
I think perhaps we should stop the discussion here. Make some recommendations. Avoid the word invalid, and rephrase the message in the active voice, and suggest this wording: submitted values are not allowed. And perhaps the people working on the issue can come up with some alternatives and choose one that they prefer. Also bring up the standard criteria that Aaron mentioned, descriptive and actionable. And I think we agree with the comments already made that contacting the site administrator is not the action we should normally be recommending. Frequently, just by changing the choices on the form, you can get what you want. most of the time it's not important to contact the site administrator. It's not an issue that has to be fixed. And I think in this case, sort of describing what the problem is enough. We don't have to give, and we can't really give explicit steps on what to do next. Is that all right, or do people want to continue brainstorming on the actual wording?
I just had one comment. Watching it in the code, there is two validations. The first one is the one that we just did, where you have the option and it's not part of the option that you had for the select or for the table select. And the other is probably the one that Ivan was showing us at the beginning, where you had the multiple and non-multiple select, and you get that message. So I think for the second one, maybe I think it should be a difference between the Ivan, can I show just the screen for a second?
Yeah, do you mean this one, the one for the log, or the one for these checkboxes?
Yeah, I think that there is two validations in the code, one for this and one for the other. It's not the same. It's not the same code. So I think for the other makes sense the invalid, but for example here, when you had a form and it's part of the code, it just that is. Wait, let me share a screen and I will just really quick show. Ivan, can you stop sharing for a second? I cannot share. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Really quick, find out. Okay. Yeah. So here in this validation is the one that we are just we saw the checkboxes and the table select. So here we are. If it's not part of the option that you have there, then you get this error, right? And then the other one, there was this one, and here is the description. When you have non-multiple select, I think this should be a different wording for this particular one. I don't know why we are using the same one, but I think for this one should be different because it's just, I don't know. I think we should be using a different one.
So are you saying that do these error messages only trigger for select lists or radio buttons or whatever? Because so far our understanding is that this is seems to be some kind of generic error message.
Unless for checking the message inside the code seems like just for the forms, all related to select fields. Yeah.
But it looks like there's a third place. There's the menu UI module. There it is also used the sentence, the error message. That's another context then.
Okay.
For the model, I think for the menu, I think was just because the illegal word, but it's not the same message. It's not because she was checking by the illegal word that was she got into the menu UI, but the message is slightly different there. Let me was just an option was illegal or something like that, but no, it's exactly the same validation.
Okay, so I'm looking at the patch. So we get if it's a field with checkboxes or table select or something, we get one type of message. If it's for if it's a field with a, I guess, a value, we get a different type of, we can get a different type of message.
Yeah, so,
Because oh, sorry, go ahead.
so maybe the answer is that we should not be using the same message in all places, and we need to send the issue back for additional work. The issue summary should describe what the various scenarios are, how to get the error message in various places, and we should consider different messages for each one separately.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going, and I think I was kind of, yeah, I would. That's what I was thinking earlier as well. I was thinking, well, if you know, it's hard to make an informed decision if we don't know where, you know, if we don't know exactly when these will be triggered. Because for, like, say, a select list, we could have a much more specific message. Like, if, for instance, if the select list doesn't allow multiple values, but the users somehow manage to select more than one value, we can be very descriptive about that message. So yeah, it's.
And I also noticed that on the logs page, the particular field is highlighted. So in addition to the error message at the top, there's also a form element level indication.
Yeah, I don't know how this plays with the inline error, the inline form errors module that's in core, but giving an error message and not being clear about which field it is, like if we highlight the field, but in the error message itself, we don't actually say which field it is.
Another thing that would kind of help the person to understand, like combining what is written and what is seen on the form, is that if there is no value selected, and getting that invalid, what's that, illegal choice when there is nothing chosen. So that kind of could also be something to separate. So then it would kind of, what you see is that you didn't choose anything, and then you get message you chose something that is not allowed. So separating when there is nothing chosen.
That's I think we have a message that covers that. I seem to remember there's a message that you would get if the field is required, but you didn't provide a value. It would be, you know,
yeah. Well, we saw that when we edited the URL to and typed in the comment in the log page. So then we had a highlighted thread, multiple select with nothing chosen, and then we had the error message. So that's the kind of the visual feedback doesn't match the situation. So that's what I was saying.
I mean, in that case, the user theoretically picked comment as a value when the list didn't contain comment, but there's also a separate scenario where a field is required and they did not provide a value, either through the URL or through, you know, the widget. I think in that case they get an error. It's just something like the field is required. And what I was wondering actually is, in that case, does the error message contain the name of the field? Because if it does, then in this case, we should also put the field name in the error message.
Yeah, it's weird that for the login here, the message is showing the element and the name, but here when the users see the message, is not showing that one. So maybe we can change the order, try to include the element's name, or at least the invalid, sorry, the not allowed value that is in this case is comment. And yeah, in this case, it's possible to create a more descriptive error because we have those values in here. We have the real element that is
Yeah.
failing and things like that. So yeah, it's true that it can be improved a lot. So let me try to do it again. Comment. Sorry, comment. Yeah, so for example, in this case, it shows something like this. I will take it from the general page, a legal choice. Expect. So if we can change this one and we change to this,
Yeah, so I would like to move on to another issue, and I think we have enough discussion here to update the issue. We have several recommendations. Be more specific, use the active voice. Do we have consensus that contacting the site administrator is not helpful? Can we get a quick thumbs up or thumbs down on that? I see 3 thumbs up. I certainly agree. I'll call that consensus. Or okay. So we certainly approve of removing the second sentence. We certainly approve of changing the word illegal. We'd like to have a better choice than invalid. We'd like to be more specific, and we prefer to use the active voice. I think that's plenty to add to the comments and let people work on it some more.
okay, so yeah, I will add some comments then to the issue with these proposals. Or what is the workflow in this case? Should I update the issue, or you as a moderator used to do that, or what is the next step?
And anyone can update the issue, so go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, and also I will propose something like this in this case, because we can have the label, or at least the value that is not allowed, and the element that in this case is the type. So I will suggest something like this, for example, for this case.
Great.
Okay.
Oh, and Yvonne and Schlaghoff, I'm pasting the link again for the issue for today's meeting. If you could comment there, that'll be the easiest way for me to make sure you get credit for joining today's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have almost 15 minutes left. Does anyone have an issue to suggest? If not, I have a few that I've looked at that have been mentioned recently on Slack. Okay. I don't see any other volunteers, so let me find the right window. There we go. So this is issue 315-7304. Can't run tests if password contains /, which seems like a sort of technical issue, not a usability issue. But if I search for the word usability on the page to see where the tag was added, here we go. Increase the font size. It looks like a message, and this is sort of a similar question to what we've been discussing. It looks as though someone is suggesting an error message: seriously malformed connection URL provided. And let's just see if the issue summary makes that clear. So if a MySQL password contains a slash, you can't run tests from the command line. Instead, you get an error like this. The error ultimately maps back to blah, 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 comparing these two strings. The proposed solution may be hard to accurately parse the string. Yeah, so it is not clear from the issue description where this string is going to show up. Let me search the page for the word malformed and see if that's explicitly mentioned elsewhere. Simo, you commented on this issue. So I guess it comes from the PHP documentation. So if this is being suggested as an error message to show to the user, I agree it's not helpful. I wish the issue were more clear about that. Simo, you also looked at this issue. Can you comment on it?
Yeah, so for me that really looks like a issue on technical implementation, because I can think of so when looking at the strings with human eyes, it's we can distinguish that which parts are there, and it could be it's just it's not as easy as using just a single function to do that. So it's a more complicated issue to fix technically. But one of the things, like I don't like using words like malformed or kind of that kind of things, because if MySQL standard allows that kind of a slash, and it doesn't exclude using that in a string, like that kind of connection string, so then it's not malformed, so it's more like unsupported. So Drupal doesn't support that, but it's not malformed if it's allowed by MySQL standard. So it's kind of so I think the minimum would be to like it can be malformed if it doesn't parse, or it can be unsupported by the method Drupal uses for parsing.
Yeah, I think the point, if I understand this issue correctly, is that the MySQL password is used as part of the string that is passed to parse URL. So there are two strings involved. One is the password and one is the URL. And the slash in the password is not supported, and the string we're passing to parse URL is malformed. But go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, maybe oversimplifying it, but to me it sounds like the error message could be as simple as Drupal does not support slash whatever forward slashes in database passwords. Like that is descriptive and very clear what the problem is. But am I oversimplifying it? Is that too, I don't know. That to me seems like like even if there's other situations error message might throw up, at least we know this is the case. You could add an if statement to check the password and return that specific error message if in that situation.
Right, we got a thumbs up from Ralph there. I also wonder if it might be possible to change the string you pass to parse URL and just make the problem go away. You know, find a way that you can handle it. Ralph, go ahead.
Just a one follow-up question in regards to what Aaron suggested. Is it possible to trigger that error message through another condition aside a backslash inside the password, or is it the only possibility that that error turns up? Then, if it is the only possibility, then I would simply go with Aaron's suggestion. It was clear and also actionable.
Well, what I checked, what parse URL does, I think there, if you add slashes somewhere else, it would also break it. So, like, I don't know where that URL comes from, but if somebody uses concatenation and makes a mistake there and passes that kind of URL, well, that does have actually a few extra slashes, like MySQL colon / my user or something like that. So it might be that it might be like actually malformed and not only unsupported.
I guess even if there's other cases where, you know, yeah, there's going to be other cases where like you put in database information and something goes wrong, right? But we have identified that this is a specific situation where an error could be thrown. So I think we should be providing a specific error message that covers this scenario. We know what the problem is. We should be providing as helpful as possible information. So and as I said, that could be as simple as we just check to make sure there's no forward slashes, you know, in the code, you know, if statement, do something to check the URL, check the URL, the credentials or whatever, and then just, you know, throw a very specific error message in that case.
So basically, the error message, according to the code, results from Drupal not being able to parse a URL from the not being able to parse the submitted URL into URL components. So that kind of but yeah, I don't see where that URL is generated for that create connection options from URL function. So I think we should kind of try to take a look where it is used. Who calls that function that tries to parse URL?
Also, is the issue title specifically says tests, but if I'm not mistaken, wouldn't this throw up in any situation? Because the database connection happens across all areas of Drupal, right? So it's not specifically about tests, unless maybe it is. I'm not close enough to the issue.
Actually, I noticed that it uses the same function also with SQLite, so it's not only MySQL. So I didn't actually even check how SQLite, what kind of passwords they allow.
And let's see, this looks like a link to the API documentation. It might just be a documentation problem that this, when you call this function, you should provide an actual URL. The link only went to the class. Let's see if we can find create connection options from URL. Create connection options from URL. Here we go. So maybe this documentation should just be a little more clear that when you pass a URL to this function, it has to be a valid URL, and then we can change the functions that that call this to fix the problem. But we are running up against the time limit. It's 1 minute before the hour. Thank you all for coming. Again, either comment on the issue or give me your Drupal.org usernames in the Slack channel. And we'll do it again next week. Any last words? Okay. Till next week then. Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
bye.
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 Thank you. Bye bye.